Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're definitively settling one of the most common and honestly most expensive misunderstandings in the entire crypto space. If you've spent any time at all around digital assets, you've heard these terms thrown around. But knowing how they actually work under the hood, that's what separates the casual tourist from the focused learners.
Okay, let's dive right in. We constantly hear Bitcoin, Ethereum, USDT. They're all just lumped together as cryptocurrencies, right? But are they all actually functioning as coins? I mean, you open your digital wallet, look at a chart, and they all just look like tickers and numbers. But functionally, the infrastructure supporting them is wildly different. So here's the great crypto confusion. People use the terms coin and token totally interchangeably in everyday conversation, but technically, they are entirely different beasts. And this isn't just some nitpicky semantics or marketing jargon. It literally comes down to whether an asset runs its own independent network or if it's just borrowing space on someone else's. And as you'll see, that distinction impacts absolutely everything, from your transaction fees to how secure the asset really is.
To make this really stick, I want you to picture a coin as a fully independent country, and a token as just a business operating inside that country's borders. Think about it. An independent country has its own roads, its own government, its own security forces, its own money. A business doesn't pave its own highways or mint its own cash, right? It just piggybacks off the infrastructure the country already built. Keep that mental model in your back pocket as we get into the specifics.
All right, so looking at coins, our independent countries, the crucial takeaway here is that a coin like Bitcoin, or say Solana, has its very own independent blockchain. It has its own security model and its own infrastructure. It is the native digital asset of that specific ledger. When you use the Bitcoin network, you pay your transaction fees, which we usually call gas fees, in BTC. The network relies on its very own miners and validators to stay secure. It's 100% self-sufficient.
Now here is where it gets fascinating. Tokens don't have their own chain at all. They are literally just smart contracts hitching a ride on existing infrastructure. If you want to create a token, you don't need to build some massive global network of computers. No way! You just write a piece of code, like an ERC20 smart contract, and deploy it onto a blockchain that's already running. And because they're basically guests in a host country, whenever you want to move a token, you have to pay the toll using the host country's native coin.
This side-by-side comparison brilliantly illustrates that technical divide. Notice the stark difference in the cost to launch here. Creating a coin requires building massive, complex network infrastructure. But launching a token? Incredibly cheap and easy. To launch a true coin, you have to convince people all over the world to run your software, secure your network, process your transactions, the whole shebang. To launch a token, you literally just deploy a smart contract. It takes a few minutes and costs a minimal fee.
And because they're simply programmed code, tokens can be designed to represent almost anything. You've got utility tokens that grant you access to digital products or services. Governance tokens that act kind of like shareholder voting rights over a protocol. Security tokens representing actual ownership in a real-world asset. And of course, stablecoins like USDT, which are pegged to a stable asset like the US dollar to avoid all that crazy market volatility. Even NFTs, those unique digital items, they are technically just tokens living on a host blockchain.
Okay, let's move on and look at how this builds into, arguably, the biggest point of confusion in the entire market, the Ethereum exception. This is exactly where most people get tripped up.
Here is the quote that resolves almost all that confusion. Ethereum's ETH is a coin, but everything issued on Ethereum is a token. ETH itself is the native coin, sure, but the Ethereum network acts as the host country for thousands of other tokens. Think of Ethereum as this massive, sprawling digital city. ETH is the local currency you absolutely must use to pay for everything in that city. But inside the city limits, there are thousands of businesses. Tokens like Chainlink, Uniswap, Shiba Inu, all just operating on Ethereum's roads.
And just to bend your mind a little bit here, you can actually wrap a native coin, like Bitcoin, into a token smart contract, so it can travel into the Ethereum city. This is what's known as wrapped Bitcoin, or WBTC. It's essentially an ERC20 token standard that just represents Bitcoin on the Ethereum network. So yes, a coin can actually wear a token wrapper to travel to another chain and take advantage of different ecosystems. Pretty wild, right?
So why should you, as a focused learner, actually care about this technical split? Does it really matter if you call something a coin or a token if you're just trying to navigate the space? Well, yes, it matters immensely.
It matters because of the real-world impact. If you want to send a token, you absolutely must hold the host network's coin to pay the gas fee.
If you have a wallet stuffed full of an Ethereum-based token, but you have zero actual ETH, you are completely stuck. Your assets are frozen because you can't pay the host network's toll. Plus, because launching a token is so cheap and easy, the market is literally flooded with thousands of low-quality projects. A token inherits the security of its host chain, sure, but it also carries the risk of its own smart contract code. So risk evaluation is a whole different ballgame.
All right, it's time to put this whole country versus business analogy to the ultimate test. Let's run through a rapid-fire quiz and see if we can apply what we've just learned to some of the biggest names in the space.
First up on our memory test, Bitcoin. Is BTC a coin or a token? Take a second and think about its underlying infrastructure. Does it have its own network or is it borrowing someone else's?
If you said coin, you hit the nail right on the head. It is absolutely a coin because it relies on its very own completely independent network of miners, nodes, and consensus rules. It paved its own digital roads from scratch.
Next up, what about the most popular stablecoin in the world? Tether, or USDT. It handles billions of dollars in daily trading volume all over the globe. But fundamentally, how is it structured?
You probably guessed it. It's a token. Since it doesn't have its own blockchain, it exists purely as a smart contract hosted on multiple other chains. You can actually find USDT operating as a separate business inside the Ethereum country, the Tron country, and even the Binance Smart Chain country, all at the exact same time.
All right, last one. We discussed this a minute ago, so let's see if it's stuck. How do we classify ethereal?
The trick here is that ETH itself is the native coin. It acts as the fuel for the very city where thousands of other tokens live and operate. The underlying Ethereum blockchain provides the roads. ETH is the coin you use to pay the tolls, and all those applications built on top, those are the tokens.
If you take away just one core memory from this entire explainer, please let it be this unshakable golden rule. A coin has its own blockchain. A token lives on an existing blockchain. Once you view the digital asset landscape through this lens, suddenly reading white papers, understanding network fees, and evaluating project risks becomes infinitely clearer.
So now that you've unlocked the real mechanics behind these assets, it begs a much bigger question. As token creation becomes even cheaper and basically automated, will the future of digital finance be ruled by a few massive, ultra-secure host countries, or just an endless sea of disposable pop-up businesses? Keep questioning the fundamentals, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.